Good evening. Welcome to tonight's business meeting of the Washington County Board of Education. We have 6 members here. We do have a quorum. Mrs. Williams, President Williams, has asked me to convey this message that she wished she could be here tonight, but Monday a week ago she had an operation. She is recovering very well, and I spoke to her yesterday. She said, I really want to come, but I think her husband had to tie her down to keep her from coming. No, not really. But she really wanted to be here, but she'll be back pretty soon. So, Mrs. Williams, best from, I hope, from everybody on the board and from everybody for a speedy and healthy recovery. So at this moment, or at this time, our student tonight is Adam Dempscher, a 5th grade student at Smithsburg Elementary, and he is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So, Adam, would you like to introduce those who are with you tonight?
All right. Right there is my mom. She's in the white short. Beside her to the right is my dad. And to my mom's left is my brother, Johnny. And that's it.
Your teacher's not here?
No, I don't.
Okay. All righty. Well, I have a cheat sheet up here. Your teacher is Mrs. Klein, but it tells me that you were nominated, I guess, this year or in the past
yes,
for the Carson Scholar Award. Dr. Ben Carson and his wife. You want to tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, I guess being picked for that was definitely a really big honor, and I kind of knew there was a very slim chance I'd actually be picked for it. So just being nominated was good enough for me, and just the whole process of doing the community service, I only had like 7 hours because I had actually just joined Boy Scouts. And maybe I would have won. I'm not saying totally would have, but I didn't have that much, so maybe I would have won if I had more, but I'm not saying I totally would have.
And you wrestle?
Yes, that's true.
And you play lacrosse.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Both very tough sports. Wrestling goes right into lacrosse. With wrestling, well, you can break your arm easily, so, there's always a risk of that. But it is a really fun sport, It's, yes, you have to put in a lot of effort and work into it. But, if you do, you can have a lot of fun with it. And lacrosse, kind of the same thing. It's, cradling the ball can take a lot of work. But over few months or years, I definitely got used to that. And I had a lot of fun.
So, are you a member of the Smithsburg Wrestling Club? I think there's a club out there, isn't there? Smithsburg?
I'm not sure about a club, but I'm part of Smithsburg Leopards team.
Okay, because I know another young man who's like in the 3rd grade. He wrestles out there, and I just thought it was something like what Williamsport had was a club and everything. Mr. Evans, I think, was a wrestler, I believe, right? Yes? No?
Well, I wouldn't say a good one.
Okay. Well, I also
You look
wrestled.
like you're in more shape than I am, so
Well, thank you.
I also wrestled, but I wasn't very
it's not much.
good either.
It doesn't take much work.
Well, not all sports are for everyone. Like I used to. Well, no, I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm saying like
No, that's fair,
I used to
it's
play.
fair.
I used to play flag football, and I was okay at it, but I never really got any touchdowns, and so I quit after 6 years. It was a long period of time, and I kind of wish I quit earlier. But something that Woody told me that flag football really wasn't for me is that in the first 3 years of lacrosse, I actually did score goals. So So lacrosse and wrestling are my two favorite sports, and those are the two only sports I play.
Says you also love a chance to prove your learning and to debate, and I can see that right now. You took on this win. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us tonight?
Nothing really, just that, I'm really honored to be here and to be speaking. So, thank you for having me.
Board members, anything? Well, thank you, Adam.
I gotta keep my mouth shut before I go.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be.
I'm just kidding.
Adam, you were
I'm just
fine.
kidding. You were great. You were great.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Adam.
You'll know not to take on a fifth
Yeah,
grader.
right,
you
yeah.
know. You'll know next time. Okay.
Yeah, he'll be student board member.
Future student board member, I think.
Yeah, right. All right. Oh, let me gather my thoughts here now. Next, we have the approval of an agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Mrs. Murray? Okay. Any changes in the agenda? Any questions, comments, anything? All right, we'll go to the vote. All in favor of tonight's agenda, please raise your hand. All right. 6-0, and the student board member concurs. Approval of the minutes. Mr. Mr. Bickford tonight, excuse me.
Yes, Mr. President, Mr. Stauffer, I move for approval of closed session minutes dated Tuesday, February 20th, 2024.
Okay, that's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? These are the closed session minutes for Tuesday, February 20th. All in favor? Okay, vote is 6-0.
I move for approval of the business meeting minutes dated Tuesday, February 20th, 2024.
Is there a second? Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any questions, comments? We'll go to the vote. Raise your hand. 6-0. Student member concurs.
And I move for the approval of the closed session minutes dated Monday, March 5th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Questions, comments? Let's go to the vote. Okay, vote is 6-0, and I turn it now over to Dr. Savine.
Thank you, President Stauffer, Vice President Stauffer, and members of the board. This evening, we will honor outstanding students in the arts. March is National Music in Our Schools Month and National Youth Art Month. I'll turn it over now to Mr. Micah Sox, Supervisor of Visual and Performing Arts. He will help us recognize our student performers who participated in state ensembles. Then following Mr. Sox, Mr. Matt Wilson, our Visual Art Curriculum Specialist, will introduce some student artists who earned awards in state and national art contests. Mr. Sox.
Good evening, Dr. Savine, Vice President Stauffer, members of the board. Tonight, we would like to recognize March as National Music in Our Schools Month and Youth Art Month. Every day in rehearsal rooms and art studios across Washington County, educators dedicate themselves to reaching all students with life-changing artistic experiences. We often see the final product, but may miss the months of practice, refinement, and learning experiences that make it all happen. Tonight, we celebrate arts education as an essential part of the educational journey by honoring our students who have achieved at the state level in their arts discipline. Maryland All-State Concerts were held on February 25th as part of the Maryland Music Educators Convention in Baltimore. Students in grades 7 through 9 may audition for the junior ensembles, and musicians in grades 10 through 12 are eligible for the senior ensembles. These students auditioned against thousands of students from across the state, and earning the All-State designation is quite an achievement. We are proud to honor 29 students tonight, a record in recent years. Students represent Barbara Ingram, Clear Spring, North Hagerstown, South Hagerstown, and Williamsport High Schools. Begin with our instrumentalist for junior orchestra, Valerie Clark Miller. For senior band, Kayla Shim. Camille Sandine. Jeremiah Boxell. For senior commercial band, Emma Mullinex, Wilson Loy, Matthew Ryan Barrett, Eliza Gregory. For senior jazz band, Liam Berger. For junior chorus, Camila Portio, Connor Jackson. For senior chorus, Maria Webb, Jocelyn Warnfeltz, Alexa Winfield, Mitchell Parmalee, Anelia Bance, Kennell Austin, Winston Estelle, and Renelle Mulbay. Mitchell and Winston were also selected as members of the American Choral Directors All-Eastern Choir. Quite an honor. Senior treble chorus, Ashlyn O'Connor, Umu Makalu, Jocelyn Flores, Kendall Whittington, Lillian Doyle, Claire Freeman, Reese Gibson, Joanna Leedy, Riley Wortman, Honora Glasgow, and Suzanne Mitchell. Congratulations to these talented students, and a big thank you to the amazing teachers who helped prepare them.
I'm glad you all are artists and you understand this. Now you're done three. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3. Last one. 1, 2. Congratulations.
Okay, and now we have our visual arts recognitions for the evening. And we're going to start with our winners from the Together We're Better Elementary and Middle School Inclusive Artwork Contest. It's a statewide contest in partnership with MSDE, the ARC of Maryland, the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council, and the Maryland Department of Disabilities. Our winners from Washington County for this event, we had one middle school winner from Northern Middle, a 6th grader, Lucas Coaster. The art teacher for Lucas was Molly Williams. And then we had 3 winners under the direction of art teacher Allison Grove. From Pleasant Valley Elementary, Kai Zimmerman, a 5th grader. Allison Rolke, a 4th grader from Pleasant Valley. And then Javion Sweat from Cascade Elementary, a 3rd grader. And then the next group of winners is related to the National Scholastic Art Awards. And these represent the gold key level winners for visual art 2D and 3D. All of these winners that I'm going to announce are from Barbara Ingram School for the Arts, and they're under the direction of Todd Guyman as the art teacher. First, we have Yeben Bond, a 9th grader. Then Elena Crutchfield, an 11th grader. Then we have Isaac Hemingway, a 12th grader. Joyce Liu, a 10th grader. Kelly Nguyen, a 10th grader. Stanley Stottlemyre, 10th grader. And Maleka Timbiano, 10th grader. And Maleka represents also our last recognition for the evening as well. She was able to have an artwork accepted into a statewide juried high school art exhibit called the Light the Lantern exhibit at the Reginald F. Lewis Museum of Maryland African American History and Culture. So it's quite an honor for Maleka to have one of her artworks selected in that upcoming exhibit in this Baltimore Museum. So congratulations to all of our visual art recognition. And for the Light the Lantern exhibit, Maleka's art teacher is Brandy Merchant.
March is Social Work Month across the country, and I'd like to call forward Helen Huffer, our Supervisor of School Counseling, and Connie Hartman, Supervisor of Special Education District Programs. They both lead teams of our talented school social workers, and they'll tell us more about how these professionals are making a positive impact on in our schools and in the lives of our students.
Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Savine. I'm Helen Huffer, Supervisor of School Counseling, with Connie Hartman, Supervisor of District Programs. We are here to recognize National School Social Worker Week, which was March 4th through 8th, 2024, with the theme Empowering Social Workers, Inspiring Action, Leading Change. Our WCPS School Social Work team serves in a variety of roles to assist students and families to overcome barriers that impede academic and personal growth. The school social workers collaborate with school staff, parents, and community partners to address students' social and emotional needs. They provide direct mental and behavioral health services, along with linkages and referrals for additional services to support students and families. They assist students in understanding their strengths, coping strategies, and utilizing these to achieve in school.
Our school social workers are licensed providers with master's degrees in social work, which makes them an integral part of student support in Washington County Public Schools. They set annual goals to help develop the growth of our students and school community each year. Our social workers focus on students each day through small group and individual sessions to enhance their strategies for success in school and for their future. Please join us in celebrating our school social workers and the work that they do with students and families each and every day. Thank you.
And we appreciate your leadership, certainly appreciate all the work of our social workers. Thank you. Mr. Stauffer, that concludes my report.
Now time for public comment. I'd like to read this statement. Each person wishing to address the Board of Education is encouraged but not required to sign up prior to the meeting and may address any topic concerning Washington County Public Schools except personnel or student matters which clearly identify an individual or individuals. Individuals wishing to address the board who do not sign up prior to the start of the meeting will be required to sign the log located at the speaker's table for the purpose of the meeting minutes. Each speaker may speak for up to 5 minutes. And so we have 2 people have signed up ahead of time. The first speaker is Jamie Krager.
Mr. Stafford, do you want me to explain the timing?
Explain the timing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Forgot.
You have 5 minutes. When you have 30 seconds left, I'll show this symbol, and then when your time is up, I'll show this.
Now we're ready. Mrs. Krager, Ms. Krager? Is she here? No? And the second person is, I'm going to take a guess at this last name, Janet Marquis. Did I pronounce that correctly? Yes, you did. Okay, thank you.
Washington County Board of Education members, WCPS staff, parents, students, and all. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this month as Washington County celebrates Arts in Our Schools Month. My name is Janet Marquis, and I am here on behalf of the Washington County Band and Orchestra Alliance. Just a little background, I'm a former band student of the South Hagerstown High School Band under the direction of the amazing Brad Smith, who had an immeasurable impact on my life and the lives of my siblings who were also in the band. I'm the mother of 2 Smithsburg Band students, one of whom graduated in 2018, and one who is a current senior and the drum major there now. Both of my children were involved in many activities in school. Both played sports years round, joined multiple service and community organizations, but it was in band that they both flourished and gained the most positive personal experiences that helped shape them into thriving adults. The opportunities they had to grow, learn, and lead were unmatched from other activities. I believe that band and orchestra breeds an environment that encourages, promotes, and engages. The Washington County Band and Orchestra Boosters Alliance stands in support of equal access to instrumental music programs in all of our Washington County schools. Participation in instrumental music programs provides students with a school community from elementary through middle and high schools. As students enter middle school and then high school, where teams may require tryouts or limited numbers of students that may participate, Washington County bands and orchestras provide unlimited members and provide security for students to know they will always have a place to call home, the band room. The inclusivity of band and orchestra programs is just one benefit of participation in instrumental music. According to Americans for the Arts and the National Parents and Teachers Association, students who participate in these programs and other related arts programs demonstrate higher school retention rates, are 3 times more likely to receive awards for attendance, and are 4 times more likely to be elected to a class office or other leadership roles. If you are a parent, a Washington County Public School employee, or a community member wondering how you can support instrumental music programs in our county, consider one of these many ways you can show your support. First of all, go to your schools and communities' concerts and performances. Express your support for these programs to your elected and appointed county and community leaders, and please join your school's band and orchestra boosters. Boosters organizations in this county welcome your support and participation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Marquis. Those who have signed up ahead of time, those are the only 2. Is there anyone else at this time who wishes to come forth and speak during public comment? Okay, gentleman there. Would you sign the log there, please, so that
Can I do it afterwards? Is this the time to speak on the school budget?
No.
It's not later?
No, yes, later.
Okay, thank you.
This is regular public comment. Anybody else for regular public comment? None? All right, board member comments? Lady back there, did you wish to speak now?
Budget, their budget.
Budget. That's what I thought you said.
You got one for, no, okay.
Is that it?
That's
Any
it.
board member comments?
I just want to say something. My son was in the band with Brad Smith as his director. Everybody loved him. He was great. The band was a wonderful experience for my son. My daughter also went through the band. Now my grandson is in the band at Springfield Middle and loving it. And you're right about band boosters. We don't have enough people to help. My daughter is actively seeking someone from Springfield to serve on the band boosters with her. She's all alone now because the people that are helping are moving on to the high school. And so it's really important that you give a little bit of your time to help with things like that. And so I'm sure she would appreciate it if somebody would step up. She decided she would be president. She doesn't mind doing that and coordinating events, but they need a treasurer and, you know, they need other things. So give your time to the band, even if it's just a little bit of time. It's worth it.
Anyone else? Okay, next is the recommendation of the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee, Mr. Jeff Prue and Ms. Kristen Milcarrick. Did I? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Stauffer, members of the board, and Dr. Savine. As staff liaison to the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee, I'd like to, I think, first publicly thank the committee. Since the board adopted their budget on February 20th, the committee has met a few times. They've had lively and very vibrant discussions about the board's draft budget and some of the iterations that have come since Superintendent Savine made his first draft budget in January and how we ended up to the draft budget we have today. And they really advocated for really what our students need. And I think I'd like to commend them for really having that focused vision of really keeping the student at the foremost of their discussions. A couple of members are here this evening. Of course, to my right is the committee's chairperson, Mrs. Kristen Milcarrick. She's served now as the chair of the committee for a few years and is probably not an unfamiliar face to the board, and we thank her for her dedication and willingness to serve. Other board members or advisory committee members here this evening, April Crowhair is here, Patty Felix and Dr. Terry Williamson are here this evening as well in support of this report. So I think without further ado, turn it over.
Good evening. The Washington County community should be pleased to see a Board of Education budget that meets the most significant needs of the Washington County community as identified by the priority areas. However, the Board of County Commissioners and citizens of Washington County should consider whether this budget fulfills the needs of the county or the collective vision for the public education for the future. The committee applauds the superintendent and the Board of Education for prioritizing the needs of students and staff by establishing a significant resource pool which recognizes the efforts provided by staff daily and to attract the best candidates for the wide array of staff openings. The committee supports the significant funding required to meet the requirements of the blueprint for Maryland's future, such as the HCC dual enrollment courses and the impactful increases in English learner staff to support the significant growth of the English learner population in Washington County. The committee supports the inclusion of the various positions addressing the achievement gaps and academic needs of the students and the increased demands placed on teachers and staff. The committee supports the inclusion of additional staff to provide for the behavioral needs of students, which impacts the ability of all students to access their education. The committee believes that there is a need to provide equitable access for all elementary age students to an elementary virtual program at the Academy for Blended Learning Education as it transitions to the Innovative Learning Program. Based on these conclusions, the members of the Budget Advocacy and Review Committee recommend restoring funding for all the staff positions that have been eliminated since the presentation of the superintendent's draft budget on January 16th, 2024, prior to adopting the budget. Thank you.
Board members, comments, questions?
Yeah, oh, go ahead, Linda.
Eliminate staff?
So the recommendation is to reinstate positions that have been eliminated since the superintendent's draft budget in January. So as a result of the funding shift from state to local government as part of the blueprint, of course, we, between the superintendent's draft and superintendent's recommended, there was about a $3 million cut in expenses, and that included eliminating what had initially been proposed positions. So the committee's recommendation is to restore those positions that were eliminated since the draft.
All right, thank you for the clarification. I thought it was current staff that we were eliminating.
Correct.
Thank you.
That was actually going to be one of my questions, because the way I read it, it sounded like we were just cutting employees. I didn't think that was true. Okay. My question is more of a concern. What do we mean by the county commissioners fulfilling future needs and, sorry, where is it? Fulfills the needs of the community of their collective vision for public education for the future. What exactly do we mean by that? Or did did you guys mean by that?
Opening paragraph for the conclusion. The opening paragraph for the conclusion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
it's the
The
first
very
one.
last sentence of the opening paragraph there. Or,
I think if I can assist, assist Kristen in this, I think the committee's feeling is, and this is phrasing that we've used, or the committee has used in the last couple of reports. Funding education in the state of Maryland is a collective vision and collective responsibility between both state government and county government. So at whatever level is decided to be funded, the community, the Board of County Commissioners need to determine if they are getting the educational system that they intend or they desire to want. And if they're not, then they need to advocate for funding in a different manner. And so I think that's the crux, is that if you feel like this is the system you want to build, then perhaps you're fine. But if it's not, and you feel like the system is falling short, you have to determine where do the resources come from to make that vision a reality. Is that helpful?
yeah, and quite frankly, that's kind of what I thought you meant. And I don't know, I really struggle with that because, we as a board and staff come up, we are very good at bashing the county commissioners for the amount of money that we think that they don't give us. And we do this year in, year out. We complain about how much money we don't get from them. And we keep doing the same exact thing over and over and over again, expecting a different result. At some point, we have to be thankful for the $350 million that we do spend on our education system. So I get that this is your report and this is your opinion. That's perfectly fine. I just kind of want to put my thanks out there because we do spend a lot of money on education. It's a lot of money. I'm not saying that we're underfunded or overfunded, but I think we need to start out and say thank you for the amount of money that we do get from the taxpayers, because it is a lot of money. So I do appreciate the hard work you get into this, or you guys have put into this. I know you're a volunteer and there's a lot of hours that you guys need to put into this. So I do truly appreciate that. I just really wish we would be a little more thankful and acknowledge that there is a lot of money that is spent on education. So again, I do appreciate it. I just kind of want to put that out there.
Anyone else?
And I really appreciate you including ABLE, which I also think is exactly what you said as a very important part of what we do.
Came from fellow committee members as well, too.
Anyone else? Comments? I would like to thank the committee and you and Mr. Prue and everybody that was involved in this. I will just say this: maintenance of effort was never intended, was intended, as far as I understand it, to guarantee that school boards did not get cut, their budgets cut, and it is really the floor. So when we say we're maintaining and funding the budget at maintenance effort, that's only because that's what they have to do, and that's just a little piece of the action. It doesn't cover all the needs that are in the school system today. I've been around this school system since 1970. So I have had many interactions with county commissioners and everything. And for me, we have many more demands on school systems today than we ever had 50-some years ago, even 20-some years ago. And it's tough, and we have to make some tough decisions, and I just hope we can come up with a budget that gets and meet the funding and still meet the needs, that everybody makes demands on us. So, anybody else? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we're going to take a recess from the business meeting and convene a public hearing. The purpose of the public hearing is to provide an opportunity to the public to comment on the Board of Education's FY 2025 Draft General Fund Operating Budget. At this time, I'd like to read from Policy KD regarding this public comment, Section 3, Letter C, Number 1. Persons desiring to speak at such public hearings are encouraged but not required to register through the superintendent's office prior to the date of the meeting or register at the location of the meeting up to 1/2 hour in advance of the commencement of the hearing. Individuals wishing to address the board who do not sign up prior to the start of the meeting will be required to sign the log located at the speakers table for the purpose of the meeting minutes. Persons speaking as individuals will be allotted 3 minutes. Those representing an organization will be allotted 5 minutes. No presenter may waive all or a portion of his or her allotted time to permit someone who is not properly registered to speak. So at this time, I have 4 names on the list. The first is Christy Gross. Are you speaking for yourself or a group?
I am, so I'll have to speak quickly.
So for an individual? Yourself? Okay, thank you.
How much? Good evening, Vice President Stauffer, board members, and Dr. Sabine. My name is Christy Gross, and I'm a high school teacher with Washington County Public Schools, as well as being a proud member and building representative for WCTA. I'm here to advocate for adequate funding. I understand that you are tasked with the very difficult decision of creating a budget for the school system, and that this has become an almost insurmountable task due to the Board of County Commissioners' continued unwillingness to fully fund the requested budget you propose year after year. Now you're faced with more challenges due to learning that you will receive $3 million less than expected from the state of Maryland. Your needs of balancing the budget directly impacts the lives of our county educators and therefore also directly impact the lives of the over 22,000 students we serve. It is for these reasons that I must implore you to do your best to rethink some of the cuts you are proposing to your original budget, specifically in the areas of reducing the number of new staff positions, including those to support safety, security, and mental health in our schools. The consideration of these specific cuts came from the email sent to WCPS on February 7th, 2024, and I am pleased to see that the Budget Advocacy Review Committee's recommendation matches my own thoughts. Schools have changed significantly since, since I was a WCPS student in the 80s and 90s, and from when I began my teaching career in 1997 at Clear Spring Elementary. Many of the changes have been for the better. However, today's students are facing much greater needs for mental health support, so it does not make sense to cut positions designed to help these students. Additionally, 2024 is a vastly different world than that of the 80s and 90s in terms of the anger, lack of communication skills, and increased apathy and combativeness that unfortunately many more students are displaying. Acting out and becoming argumentative with school staff is now the norm with many students, as opposed to this sort of thing being a rare occurrence when I was in school. On any given day in the high school where I teach, I witness scores of students wandering the halls, either skipping classes or taking advantage of a teacher-granted restroom break to instead meet up with friends and walk the building for 10 to 15 minutes or more. It's not uncommon for teachers to attempt to sweep these students back to class only to be ignored or worse, cursed at, yelled at, called names, and threatened. Fights are sadly a more common occurrence these days, and our school has had many this school year. In addition to some recent instances of disgruntled parents showing up and causing issues, plus students with weapons and pepper spray. And these are just the stories that ran in our local newspaper and the situations we know about. Surely there are more instances out there that go undiscovered. Given these increased challenges with student behavior, it is certainly not the time to propose cuts in security and safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Neil Becker.
Add as many as they wanted.
And I'll be speaking as an individual. Good evening, board members and Dr. Sovine and staff. Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts on the budget. And I'm going to ad-lib a lot. Mr. Evans, I'm thankful, but I can only be so thankful for maintenance of effort. The bare minimum is not enough. You don't need to hear this because you continually, and several boards and superintendents have asked for a lot more than the bare minimum. And we get shut down year after year. Not too long ago, well, actually it has been a long time ago, the state and the county shared funding at about 50-50. For every dollar, 50 cents was from the state, 50 cents was from the county. That's almost 70-30 now. 70 from the state, 30 from the county, dollar for dollar. That is not acceptable. The bare minimum is not enough. Look at all the recognition over this year at board meetings. Gifted and talented, we the people, all our artists tonight, state champs, FFA. Oh, don't forget, Boonesboro Elementary saved the life of a student in medical distress, yet our county commissioners don't think we're worthy of more money to support our students, to support our staff, to support our buildings, to modernize our learning facilities. Look at the business items on our consent agendas. Technology, windows, oh, Lord knows we shouldn't have windows at work. Flooring, doors, HVAC, kitchen equipment. We're not asking for gold. We're not asking for platinum and diamonds. We're asking for enough to keep our students safe and secure, our staff safe and secure. That's why I wrote to you last week and said, ask for more. Ask for more. Let the commissioners say no. We need, and our students need more. And to hear commissioners, somewhat veiled yet not so veiled, criticizing our spending on EL, I'm sorry. We welcome every student who walks through the doors. I'm in a school right now that doesn't have more than 50% of any single race. Our county has the largest growth in EL percentage-wise of any county in the state, yet our elected officials are going, well, why are we spending money on EL? You know, why did they come in and speak English? That's BS. We welcome every student who enters our doors, and we should never undermine, and our county commissioners should never undermine that. I would tell them that, but I can't in person because they meet at 10 o'clock in the middle of my school day. I can't read this speech to them. We have perennially stretched every dollar. Where those dollars are tearing, we can't stretch them anymore. You're doing all you can as a board and staff to be sound spenders. We need more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Amanda Whitmore.
I'm going to say I'm speaking as an individual, but I am also here recognizing as the co-lead of the Decoding Dyslexia Maryland Washington County chapter. So good evening, Board of Ed members. For several months, myself and several other parents have been advocating for increased funding for professional development to train more educators in a certified dyslexia training program. So far, the response from the school system has been a work session to discuss what the school currently does and plans to do for struggling readers. Currently, WCPS screens K through second graders with DIBELS, an assessment to identify students with reading struggles, including dyslexia. And yet my own third grader did not get additional reading assessments until I reached out in second grade and said something. When we first started in WCPS and received the DIBELS letters stating, quote, well below, year after year, I didn't know what that could mean. I thought, oh, the school says they have it. They have reading specialists who are helping. They are the experts. It wasn't until I educated myself that I knew to take action. However, for a dyslexic, early identification is key. End of second grade or third grade to get an IEP is late. And I know I'm not the only parent who has experienced this. If DIBELS is a dyslexia screener, then the students identified in kindergarten as at risk should be immediately further assessed and put into a Tier 3 intervention. However, as we learned at the work session, WCPS is just now, this school year, getting staff through a dyslexia course certified by the International Dyslexia Association, IDA, which means those who have been looking at the DIBELS results don't know when they are seeing a dyslexic student. If they did, my son and other parents' kids would be identified before third grade. I want to be clear, though, that we do not blame the teachers. We have wonderful and caring teachers, and they are doing all they can with the knowledge they have. Unfortunately, colleges do not include dyslexia in the curriculum, much like how colleges have taught balanced literacy for years. Now WCPS has a 30-hour course for science of reading that your K through 3 teachers can take since they didn't get that in their college. The same needs to happen with dyslexia, a 60-hour course in a program certified by the IDA. However, next year's plan, according to central office, is to send 90 staff through a Wilson introductory course, a course not certified by IDA. That's approximately $63,900 that could instead be used to send 37 staff through Bowman Orton Gillingham Plus, a 60-hour training program that is certified by IDA. It makes no sense that central office wants to spend more money and spend unnecessary time on an introductory 16-hour course. That's like saying, hey, you want to learn about fighting fires? Here's a cup of water and go take it to that burning building and try to put it out. It doesn't work. The fires will keep burning. The plan is to also send some staff to receive Wilson Certification Level 1. That only covers steps 1 through 6 of Wilson's 12-step program. Level 2 will also need to be completed unless the plan is to just halfway help. Let the fire smolder and hope it doesn't reignite. To complete Level 1 and 2, it will take 2 years, all while the fires continue to burn. Or WCPS can shift and invest more in another proven program, Bowman OG Plus, that can be completed in a matter of months, give educators a hose to fight that burning city. Oh, and it can be started with kindergarteners, where Wilson can only begin at second grade. Tonight, we again encourage the board to increase the budget that more special education educators are trained in a certified dyslexia program. Pass a budget more than what is proposed so we can show the county commissioners how much we need to invest in education. Increase the special ed professional development line from approximately $50,000 to $500,000 so we can invest in our teachers' professional development and invest in our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ashley McCusker.
My name is Ashley McCusker, and as many of you know, I am running for the Board of Education. Tonight I am talking in reference to the 2025 budget. I thought it would be beneficial to let you know where I stand. I believe balancing the budget is one of the hardest tasks the board members will have. I think hard cuts will need to be made, but I feel like the current proposed cuts are not in the best interest of students. I find it very worrisome that the main things I am seeing on the chopping block are teaching positions and other positions directly tied to our schools, such as principals and counselors. Our students should always come first, so I don't think cuts from people working directly with the students is where we should find money to balance the budget. I would not remove those positions. So what would I do? I would first have to ask some tough questions. They would be, number one, why are there no proposals for positions to be cut from the central office? If we can have teachers take on more responsibilities to help with consolidating, why can't the same be done for employees in this building? Number two,
Why are we able to avoid cutting any positions if we lower the proposed raises? I don't know about you, but if I knew there was a possibility one of those positions could be cut from my school, I would be willing to take a smaller raise to ensure our schools had those positions instead. Cutting positions means others will have to pick up the slack. I'm not sure that teachers have any more slack to give. Most importantly, number 3, why are we not pushing back against the blueprint? I have an article from the Washington Post written in December, and the title reads, Maryland School Districts Struggle to Comply with Blueprint Law. This article basically goes into some of the problems the counties are experiencing with implementing Blueprint. The main problem all of them are facing is funding. This lawsuit was put in place with no way for the state to pay for it. We are so early in the implementation of Blueprint, and the state has already underfunded our county by about $3 million. Instead of putting so much pressure on our county commissioners and we, the taxpayers of this county, we need to place pressure on the state who is forcing this funding challenge. Have we done that? I would suspect not, and it is something I think needs to change with how things are done. Some of our board members need to do more to support our community instead of never pushing back against the state. I think the state is realizing the issues with the funding, and I think we need to take the opportunity to ask them to waive certain criterias so we can balance our budget instead of taking away our frontline workers. Thank you.
Thank you. That's the end of the names on the list. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? If so, please come forward and sign your name to the log sheet. Yes, come on up. Are you speaking as an individual or for a group?
Good evening. My name is Tom Thorson. I'm speaking as an individual.
Okay, thank you.
I reside on Ideal Circle in Hagerstown, Maryland. At 74 years old, I've been a resident of this area for over 15 years. Having retired from a Fortune 500 company where I held a senior manager's position overseeing multiple manufacturing facilities throughout Europe, Middle East, and Africa. My wife is also a retired elementary guidance teacher from Prince George County, and she was a substitute teacher here. But I'm speaking for me, not my wife. I have 4 ideas how to narrow the gap between the local revenue and expenditures. I highly encourage the Washington County School Board and Teachers Association to aggressively lobby the Washington County Democratic Central Committee and Delegate Brooke Grossman, District 2B, to advocate for slashing the overreaching blueprint for Maryland requirement or provide additional state funding to the Washington County schools. Despite Governor Hogan's veto of this Maryland legislation several years ago, it was overruled by the majority of the House and the Senate. It's an imperative that we restore common sense fiscal responsibility in Maryland. Like the lady said earlier, I think it was cut by at least $3 million so far. Number 2, the idea that the Washington County Commissioners possesses a surplus fund is very misleading. A surplus fund can only be claimed once the pension fund is fully funded, debts are lowered, and the prudent reserve is augmented to accommodate future capital projects, including new school construction. 3, considering the constraints of the limited funds and heightened taxes imposed on Maryland citizens, it's imperative for the school board to reassess its budgeting strategy. I strongly advocate for adopting a zero-based budgeting approach where every expenditure is rigorously justified, especially focusing on items unrelated to teacher salaries. It's time to adopt a stringent, what I call a scorched earth policy stance on administrative spending to ensure fiscal responsibility. Number 4, and this is addressed to the Teachers Association. Is there any teachers here tonight? Association? Thank you. It's imperative that the leadership team of the Washington County Teachers Association presents practical solutions to the county commissioners to narrow the gap between spending and revenue. Your dedicated members rightfully deserve a wage increase. If you advocate for an increase in state income tax, boldly express your stance and actively campaign for it. Utilize impactful strategies such as placing a full-page advertisement in our local newspaper and leveraging social media platforms to rally support for this tax increase. My calculations from 2.95% to 3.2 is around 9%. And just that alone equates to almost $8 million over a full year that we're out. While considering funding options, exercise caution against tapping into disparity grants, or what I refer to at-risk funds for operational expenses. Instead, prioritize their allocations solely for capital projects such as school construction. Mere calls for fully funding the school budget without offering viable solution is really fiscally irresponsible of the Teachers Association. The Teachers Associations must step up and contribute meaningful proposals to address these challenges. It's similar to let's defund the police, but no solution on how to lower crime. And defunding the school budget is kind of the same motto.
Thank you, Mr. Thornton.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else at
Can I
this?
approach the clerk to hand her this?
Yeah.
Is there anyone else at this time who would like to speak?
Ethan Lowen, Patriot Parents Organization. In February of last year, shortly before last year's budgetary process began, the superintendent's staff gave a presentation in this room about the long-range plan to increase the cost of public schools over the next 10 years. That plan is called the Blueprint. During that presentation, I stated that the Blueprint's spending increases are so big that it isn't just increasing the size of our school's budget, rather it will take over our state's budget. And now, as we begin this year's budget process, what I spoke about last year has taken effect, because this year's budgeting process is different than any other that this board has engaged in, because this year is the first time that as a state we are running out of money. I don't mean that we have to tighten our fiscal belts for a year or two because a bad economy is temporarily lowering tax revenues. I mean that our governor has announced that our state no longer has the ability to gather enough money in taxes to pay for what has been promised. The governor announced several months ago that in order to cover a more than $1 billion deficit we as a state have this year, we are going to borrow a lot of money and we are going to pull a lot of money out of our state emergency savings. Furthermore, our governor announced that the budget deficit is going to grow every year for the next 5 years. In other words, just like a person making unsustainable financial decisions, we are going to be living on a credit card for the foreseeable future with no plans to return to living within our means. Because, according to the projections of our governors and legislature's financial management offices, in 5 years we will be spending about 4.3% more each year than we will be making. No individual, no family, and even no government can borrow that much money, adding that much in interest payments year after year. And that deficit in 5 years, which will be $3.2 billion going onto our collective credit card, is made up entirely of the $4.1 billion cost of what we are talking about today, funding the Blueprint. That's a $3.2 billion deficit because of Blueprint's $4.1 billion cost. In other words, with the Blueprint, we'll be swiping our credit card to the tune of $3.2 billion a year and headed towards financial distress. Without Blueprint, we'd be headed towards a $900 million perpetually sustainable surplus. And that is why one news establishment, after these numbers were published, referred to the teachers union as the overlord of our state's politicians. Because there is no organization, there's no person who has called for us to bury ourselves in debt in order to allow our schools to do so many functions that have nothing to do with teaching children reading, writing, math, science, and history, except for the teachers union. Let's be real. This Blueprint calls for doctors to come into our schools at the school's request, providing health care to our children without us, the parents, around. That is terrifying, but it is what the union supports. My question is, if I was talking about the impossible cost of the Blueprint from the first time it was presented by the superintendent's staff more than a year ago, why do you, the board members, refuse to discuss the reality as well? Why do you continue to push the public into pressuring our county commissioners to take funds away from law enforcement, health care, upgrading utilities, etc., in order to put more money towards an expense that can't be met? Because if, according to our governor's and legislature's own financial management offices, the citizens of our state do not have the tax dollars to give for Blueprint, then these same citizens don't have the tax dollars to give to the county government to pay for Blueprint either. Do I understand the budget better than any of you? Is that the reason for the difference between what I said last year and what our state's financial management office is saying this year versus what you are telling the community right here, right now? I don't think that's the case. I think that just as it is with politicians throughout our state, where the majority of them seek out the teachers' union's endorsement to become what is called a, quote, apple ballot candidate, you need to support the union's policies to keep that apple ballot designation. And it is equally true with the members of this board. Most of you are apple ballot politicians, hence the nickname Overlord. However, as dire as the situation is, and there are not many scenarios more harmful to a society's future than for its politicians to simply stop balancing budgets and managing money in a sustainable manner. However, the truth is that it is more important to understand how easy it is to fix this situation. Just 11 years ago, our state was in the top 5% nationally for reading achievement, and we had sustainable finances. But now, our reading performance has fallen below the national average. There was never a reason to get rid of those policies from 11 years ago and to have them replaced with Blueprint's policies of today. And the good news is there is nothing keeping us from returning to those policies. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forth and speak at this time?
I like to be last.
You speaking for the organization?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Vice President Stauffer, Dr. Sovine, and members of the Board of Education. Budgets, while not political documents per se, reflect the values and priorities of an organization. I found that to be true in my past role as consistory president for my church and in my role as president of the Washington County Teachers Association. It's also true for household budgets. No matter what kind of budget, no matter how big or small, budgets reflect our values as individuals, families, and as organizations. From my involvement with organizations and as my husband's partner for 37 years, I have learned firsthand that budget discussions and decisions take compromise, conversation, categorization, mutual understanding, and respect. I appreciate the discussions and the work you have done to develop the priorities that you have stated and published for your proposed budget. First, salary and compensation to attract and retain staff. WCTA, as you know, is currently negotiating with the board's team for next year's contract, and certainly we do not want a repeat of last year's situation. I just want to add that the working environment for teachers has changed a great deal in the last 10 years. And many teachers are opting out of education before they reach retirement age. I urge you to follow up with younger and mid-level teachers who are leaving at the end of this year with more than a courtesy exit survey. When we lose teachers at the early and mid-career years, we are losing out on our own investments of time and resources,
and with the educator shortage, we will not be able to replace them easily. Second, safety and security, mental health, and behavioral supports. The same number of individuals who managed schools and classrooms 10 years ago are not adequate to the task in 2024. I commend to you an article published on March 13, 2024 by The Atlantic magazine titled "End the Phone-Based Childhood Now" to further your understanding of the current state of childhood, not just in the United States, but around the globe. Our kids are not the same as they were, and our kids are not okay. This takes more resources, not less. This year, we have more teachers than I have ever heard of before being hurt at school by students from across the K-12 spectrum. School staff have been hit, bruised, bitten, knocked down, and punched. Sometimes it's an accident insofar as the punch or shove was meant for someone else, but however you look at it, students who are in crisis are in our hallways and classrooms every day. We need to do more, and we need to do more immediately. Third, meeting the requirements of the blueprint for Maryland's future. WCTA supports the intent and promise of the blueprint. MSEA continues to advocate for adequate funding and responsible implementation of the law. This year, our teachers are carrying the burdens of additional prescribed small group instruction and intensive student-by-student reporting of interventions without any additional time in the school day. The blueprint requires these reports and interventions, and we support that, but our teachers don't yet have the blueprint's additional planning time to meet those expectations. More blueprint funding will eventually be coming from the state, but that does not help us this year or perhaps even next. And finally, combating inflation. Salaries for teachers have not kept pace with inflation, and when teachers are asked continually to do more with less at work, it adds insult to injury when they also have to do more with less for their own families because they have not received adequate raises. I'm sure that I'm probably out of time by now, so I will just simply summarize to say that all things cost more. Maintenance of effort and small percentage increases are not enough to meet these rising costs. That means the discussions about what to cut, where to cut it, and how to cut it become more and more divisive and contentious. It is not an easy task. WCTA will continue to advocate for adequate funding from our local county commissioners. I urge you to ask them for what we need. And whatever you do receive, I ask that you include teachers' voices, feedback, and concerns in your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this time? Please come forward if you do. Anyone else? I see a gentleman there. Do you wish to speak? I saw you moving. Gentleman in the coat and tie there? Oh, okay. I saw you looking around. Anyone else? All right. At this time, we'll adjourn the public hearing and reconvene the business meeting. Thanks to all who came out to express your concerns and ideas about the budget. Moving on to old business. Ms. Rahm, a lot of policies.
I will do my best to get through them. Vice President Stauffer, Dr. Savine, members of the board. The topic is the second reading of proposed changes to policy EFGH surveillance cameras. The policy committee is now recommending the Board of Education approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy EFGH.
Is there a motion?
Vice President Stauffer, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy EFGH entitled Surveillance Cameras.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any questions or comments?
Just for my knowledge, acknowledgement, the, in number 2 where it says backgrounds, it says in the new text, the Washington County Public Schools Safety Plan. Then down on A, it says in vehicles owned by the board. What is the difference between where we say the board and the Washington County Public Schools? Give me why that's being changed.
The Board of Education that's all of you folks, authorize the approval of purchases of vehicles. So you are the ones that buy it. The safety plan itself is operational, and the employees of WCPS, Washington County Public Schools, are the ones that design it, the committees, and implement it. It's not something that's formally approved by the Board of Education. That's the difference, as it pertains to this
I
policy.
don't have any problem with it. I was just
Okay.
wondering why they wasn't the same, but I see that now, so thanks.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor of this approval of policy EFGH on second reading, please raise your hand. All right. It's 6-0, student member concurs. Next is second reading of proposed change to policy BCBB.
The committee discussed the comment received at the first reading Ed's public works session on March 7th, 2024, but did not recommend any further changes to the policy. The policy committee is now recommending the Board of Education approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy BCBB.
Is there a motion?
Vice President Stauffer, I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy BCBB entitled Officers of the Board of Education.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that Dr. Sentmeyer? Oh, okay. Any questions, comments?
I'll just add that we were questioning about associations, I think it was.
Organizations.
Organizations. And could you give, I forget off the top of my head what we gave examples of that as being. I know we said MABE was one of them.
Correct. That was largely the conversation is MABE or a presentation, anything get into a deliberation. If we had some agreement or memorandum, we were in conversation with a local organization, entity, which I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. We had a lengthy discussion about
I
it.
think, did we say like the Barbara Ingram Foundation?
Thank you. The foundations, the education foundation, say it was a use agreement with the Rotary, something like that. It was to distinguish and delineate from just a member of the board, Mr. Evans, speaking at an organization versus entering into deliberations with an entity or organization.
Any other questions or comments? Let's go to the vote. All in favor of approval of BCBB on second reading? Raise your hand. Vote was 6-0. Student member concurs. Next is second reading to rescind policy BDDK, reporting Board of Education meeting business.
Policy BDDK is covered elsewhere in other board policies and essentially has become nothing more than a paperweight. The policy committee is now recommending the Board of Education approve the second reading to rescind policy BDDK.
Is there a motion?
Vice President Stauffer, I move to approve the second reading to rescind policy BDDK entitled Reporting Board of Education Meeting Business.
Second.
Any questions, comments? Let's go to the vote. All in favor of approving policy BDDK on second reading, please raise your hand. Vote is 6-0. Student member concurs. Next is the second reading of proposed changes to policy
Vice President Stauffer, just to clarify and confirm for that vote, it's to rescind, second reading to rescind. Just wanted it clarified.
Did I not say that?
You did not say rescind.
Second reading to rescind, get rid of it, yes.
Thank you.
Trash it. Go ahead, I'm sorry about that.
Second reading and proposed changes to policy FEB, Professional Architectural and Engineering Services. The policy committee is now recommending the Board of Education approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy FEB.
Is there a motion?
I move to approve the second reading of proposed changes to policy FEB entitled Professional Architectural and Engineering Services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Let's move to the vote. All in favor of approving the second reading of proposed changes to policy FEB? I get in the habit of saying that, and then I forget we were rescinding that. Please raise your hand. Vote is 6-0. Student member concurs. That's the end of old business. Next is new business. First reading of proposed changes to policy CIA. appointment of acting principals.
The Policy Committee reviewed policy CIA at its public work sessions on February 1st and 14th and March 7th, 2024. The committee is recommending several changes to the policy to clarify the intent of the policy. The committee recommends including a definition section to distinguish between an acting principal and a principal designee and between a short-term absence and long-term absence. Under the committee's proposed changes, a school principal may designate a staff member to serve as their designee in the event of the principal's short-term absence, but for a principal's long-term absence, the superintendent will appoint an individual. The committee is recommending the Board of Education approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy CIA.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy CIA entitled Appointment of Acting Principals.
Any questions or discussion? We'll move to the vote. All those in favor of approving policy CIA on first reading, please raise your hand. Vote is 6-0. Student member concurs. Next is the first reading of proposed changes to policy DFA, revenues from investments.
The Policy Committee reviewed policy DFA at its public work sessions on February 1st and 14th and March 7th of 2024. The committee reviewed the policy at the request of staff, who advised the committee that the staff titles currently in the policy are outdated. The committee is recommending the titles and formatting also be updated. Other changes to the policy are stylistic, except for the change being proposed in Section 3A4. This change is being proposed so the policy accurately reflects the current practice. The committee is recommending the Board of Education approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy DFA.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy DFA entitled Revenues from Investments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Zentmeyer. Any discussion? Questions, comments?
No, I have a
Oh.
question. Should there be some caps in here as to when we are privy to information? Like when the treasury bills are sold and it's a massive amount, like $3.5 million or $6 million. It would have been nice to know that. Can we incorporate it before we add more hands to the pot, that we know what it is I know that money needs to be available, but if it's being if we're catching it in before its maturity date, it would be nice to know that.
I will note that as a comment. If you're looking for an answer today, I would need to seek additional information from my friend in the back. So I'll note that. We can discuss it and bring Mr. Prue and his team into the policy committee discussion.
Anything else? Move to the motion. Approve policy CIA on the first reading of proposed changes to that. All in favor? Vote 6-0. Student member concurs. Next, first reading proposed changes to policy DI/DIA, fiscal accounting and reporting.
The Policy Committee reviewed policy DI/DIA at its public work sessions on February 1st and 14th and March 7th, 2024. The committee reviewed the policy because it had not been reviewed in a number of years. The changes being recommended to the policy by the committee are formatting and stylistic in nature. The proposed changes do not change the intent or the purpose of the policy. The committee is recommending the Board of Education approve the first reading of proposed changes to policy DI/DIA.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the first reading proposed changes to policy DI and DIA, /DIA, fiscal accounting and reporting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, questions, comments? Move to the vote. All in favor of approving policy DI/DIA on first reading, please raise your hand. Vote is 6-0. Student member concurs. Next is first reading to rescind policy DFD. I will remember that this time.
The Policy Committee reviewed staff's recommendation to rescind policy DFD at its public work session on March 7th, 2024. The committee agreed with the recommendation because the use of school facilities by non-school groups is covered extensively in policy KG, use of school facilities by non-school groups, and administrative regulation KG-R, information for applicants for use of school facilities. The committee is recommending the Board of Education approve the first reading to rescind policy DFD.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the first reading to rescind policy DFD entitled Rentals and Service Charges.
Is there a second?
Second.
Already had you down. Okay, the question before us is the, asking you to approve to rescind policy DFD on first reading. All in favor? The vote is 6-0. Student member concurs. And that is the end of the policies. Thank you. Next is the consent agenda.
Good evening,
Good
Vice
evening,
President. Oh, sorry.
Mr.
Good
Bakel.
evening, Vice President Stauffer, members of the board, Dr. Sovine. Tonight I have 10 items for your review. These items have been reviewed by our Purchasing Review Committee and are being recommended for approval, and staff is available if you have any additional questions.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the awards, renewals, and procurements for roof replacement at Williamsport Elementary School to Patuxent Roofing and Contracting LLC at a cost of $1,699,607. Professional design services for Pleasant Valley Elementary HVAC replacement to Alban Engineering, Inc. at a cost of $99,000. Electrical distribution replacement at Williamsport High School to S&S Electric at a cost of $750,000. Classroom modification at Springfield Middle School to GRC General Contractor, Inc. at a cost of $1,067,472. Flooring replacement at various schools to Carpet Gallery at a cost of $285,241, and Dorsey Brothers at a cost of $94,597.73. Professional auditing services to Clifton Larson Allen, CLA LLP at a cost of $55,000. Sale of Apple products to vendor at the minimum guaranteed value of $856,320. Vulnerability management software renewal to CDWG at a cost of $96,750. Secondary Science Core Instructional Resources renewal to Amplify Education, Inc. at a 4-year cost of $384,845. And to delegate approval authority of the bids for electric supply services to the selection committee that will report their decision at a future meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. What is the plan for the funds after we sell those Apple products? I figured Jeff would have to come up. You usually buy, you don't sell, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Historically, those funds are captured as a revenue item in the current fiscal year. And at that point, they can either be reallocated by the board as a budget adjustment, or they can become fund balance towards the end of the year.
So I would like to see those funds drop to the fund balance because we are very low on that, and I would hope that we could move that to the fund balance to get it closer to what our policy states.
One point, the funds actually, with the time frame we gave them, they could actually fall into next fiscal year. So it could be, we'll get some of the money up front and then some of the money when it's finally completed. And that money could, I think the time frame goes into like August, so it could be next fiscal year.
So the way the procurement was written, the percentage is due to the Board of Ed at the time they pick up the devices. The vendor then grades all the devices, and there'll be a final amount that they pay us for them. But there's a minimum payment that is due based on that procurement. So what staff could do, and I'm going to stretch my accounting basis a little bit here, but what we can do is If they've not finished the process and made final payment by June 30, we can do an accrual as deferred not deferred revenue, but anticipated revenue would be on our books and on our financial statements for the fiscal year end, which would capture that revenue in this fiscal year. And then if the amount goes over the minimum required return on the value, then that would be realized as revenue in FY25. But staff can work to hold those revenues in that category, in the revenue category, and if we do a budget adjustment, try to hold those back if that's the will of the board to let that money fall into the fund balance.
Thank you.
Anyone else? I'd just like to say this, that the electrical distribution replacement at Williamsport, that's a really good run from 1970, 54 years for some of that stuff. That's truly amazing, really, when you think about it. Anyone else? All right, we'll move to the vote. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda? Okay, vote is 6-0. Student member concurs. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next is the Downsville Pike Elementary School schematic design. Mr. Rollins, Mr. Criswell, and Mr. Blake, and Ms. Lyon from the architects firm.
Good evening, Vice President Stauffer, Dr. Savine, members of the board. We're here tonight we're pleased to present you the first look at Downsville Pike Elementary School for your approval. Mr. Blake and Ms. Lyon and the Mosley team have been doing a great job, and so I'm just going to turn it over to them to present their work. We can get the PowerPoint.
Dr. Sylvain, members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to present today. We're going to walk you through briefly a short presentation of schematic design and talk through some of the key elements of the project. So up here is the site. It's about 15 acres. It's right out here in front of the building. It's bounded by Downsville Pike on the west edge and the CES building on the south, and of course the access drive to the CES on the east side. This is the proposed site plan. We've located the building centrally on the site. It's positioned such that it can, the main entrance is facing the CES building, so we have a visual and physical connection between the two. A couple other key site design elements are a separation of the bus loop and the parent drop-off loop. You can see the bus loop connected to Downsville Pike, and that's the direct access. And then the parent drop-off loop will be using the existing CES access drive. A couple other items are looking at ways to separate the playground areas for the pre-K and kindergarten levels with the upper grade levels, and then also providing some ability for future expansion of both the building and parking areas on the site. This is a first floor plan showing the building. You can see how it's organized with a central, what we're calling a central Main Street corridor. The main entrance and administration is located in the bottom left, and those will be access points for both the parent drop-off and the bus drop-off loops. Along that Main Street corridor are some of the common area spaces, the gymnasium, the cafeteria. And on the left-hand side, you can see some representative examples of what those spaces might look like. Another main feature on the first floor is the Instructional Resource Center. It's located in a central position close to the main entrance, so it has accessibility for after-hour community use. It is also connected to an outdoor classroom space, which also has a separate access point off the main corridor. And then on the right-hand side, you can see some examples of some of those spaces. On the second floor, it's predominantly classroom spaces for the upper grades, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. There are some support spaces and faculty spaces as well. And again, on the right-hand side are examples of what those spaces would look like. Okay, this table shows a comparison of the space program square footage in the ed spec relative to what the floor plans show in schematic design. You can see that some of that square footages have a little bit of a variance, but the overall gross square footage falls within our target goals. And then this is a ed spec and schematic design comparison for our phase 2 portion of the building. We're still meeting our target for gross square footage, but we've got some slight variances on the net square footage, predominantly because we're using a creative way to accommodate some phase 2 classrooms by reconfiguring phase 1 program and then building some replacement space in phase 2 that allows for a little bit more efficient build out, less complication during construction. This is a couple diagrams showing the general building massing. We've got a combination of roof forms. We're using flat roof and sloped roof forms where appropriate. The classroom wings will be more traditional in their massing and their use of the roof forms. We're also using that Main Street spine to provide some opportunities for some glazing up at the higher levels to bring some natural light down into the corridors. These are just a couple of building sections. You can see the top sections are in contrast to the lower ones. The top ones show the larger volume spaces, gymnasium and cafeteria, and the bottom ones show the classroom wings with standard height corridors and the sloped roofs. And then here we have our building elevations. All the materials proposed on the building will be durable, low maintenance, typical to educational facilities. There'll be complementary materials to what is here on the adjacent CES building facade. And then the main entry has kind of takes its inspiration from some of the architecture here on this building and has a very visible feature, and will have a lot of transparency predominantly at the ground level. And this set of tables shows the current construction estimate and the current schedule. Right now, we're tracking a little bit above the proposed budget. This is typical during schematic design. Our cost estimating group incorporates contingency and escalation in their line items. At schematic design, there's still a level of unknown, so they want to make sure that there's some of that factored in. Certainly during our next phase, we'll have more detail. That level of estimation will be much more complete. And we certainly will be working with our WCPS colleagues to look at opportunities to bring the project back within the budget target. We have a lot of different strategies we can employ to do that. We can look at some targeted value engineering strategies and some bid alternates to provide some flexibility on bid day. So that, I think, is the end of our short
Just want to let you guys know I'm confident from my seat that we can get that budget where it needs to be. This is very typical, as Mr. Blake said, at this stage in the project, that you'll run slightly over because you're taking kind of a 20,000-foot look down at this building. Nothing's really detailed yet, and as we get into the details, I think we'll be able to find all those opportunities to get this building right on budget, right where it needs to be, and the square footage slightly reduced to right where the program level is. So it's a work in progress, and this is where we sit right now, so we're just reporting that to you all. So we're here to seek your approval and to answer any of your questions as we go forward here. Based on your approval, these documents are going to be submitted to the Interagency Commission down at the state for their approval, and the architect will be free to move forward into the next phase of design development work on the building. So if you have some questions, we're here for you.
Thank you. Since this is a motionable thing, is there a motion?
Wait, you have a question?
I think, go ahead and make a motion.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion for the approval of the Downville Pike Elementary School schematic design.
Is there a second?
Second.
I might as well just write your name down here. Just carrying on with
Just
it.
put
You know
Z.
me. All righty. Questions, comments, discussion?
Sterling Road, I know it's not on your list. Are we planning a traffic light there, or that, I know we have to get approval, but that's a question that's come
We
up.
did
with
a traffic
constituents.
study, and based on that traffic study, it calls for a traffic signal there. We still have to go through a process with the Maryland Department of Transportation. They have to okay it, and there's a whole process we're going through on that, so.
Got it.
But
The
right now,
constituents ask, right now, we're planning on a traffic light.
That's
there.
correct.
Okay, thanks.
And that would be with a bus loop and a parent exit, 2 different locations.
right, right now, this project would install a traffic signal at Sterling Road, where we come in with the bus loop. Our understanding from the county is that the developer across the street is responsible to put a traffic signal at the entrance to this building, the current entrance.
The current.
Right.
And that will be done? Or just, I mean,
As far as we know, we
Okay.
haven't heard that they're not doing it. It's not up yet, so, I mean,
that needs 2 traffic signals?
Signals along Downsville Pike? Okay.
that should really,
It's going to slow Daryl down. Sorry, Daryl.
that should help us.
Sorry, sorry.
Now I gotta make it at a normal time.
It should really help with some of the speeds we're seeing on the road.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the board up here?
If, and tell me if it's too soon to answer this, say that school was open today and the other 2 were closed, what would we be at as far as capacity goes?
That is a tough one.
Yeah, right now, without going through the redistricting process, it's kind of hard to say. Let's say
Assuming it was just
I
a
could.
straight change.
Yeah, let's say if it was a straight change, everything else, it would be probably a little less than full. We would obviously want to offer some enrollment relief to some of our other facilities. We certainly want to have a chance to propose some ideas amongst the board and the communities of how we could more efficiently serve those areas. But yes, we're at the right size today. We need to watch some future developments. That's part of the reason we put the Phase 2 aspect into this, similar to Jonathan Hager. I don't know if you noticed, but on the plans, you'll see where those areas are. They can be put onto the building without major disruption to the building. So we want to make sure we're thinking ahead now so we can save money later if we do come to that. If some of those developments or some of that growth does not come to fruition, we won't need to do it, and we won't need to add that 5th and final round. So as of right now, if the school just magically appeared tomorrow, we'd be in good shape. 7 years from now, it's something we may need to look at or consider.
And that was kind of where I was going with that question, so thank you. So, I mean, it would be a very reasonable cost then, say, instead of putting 1 million trailers out there like we have at South, we would be able to go and add on to this relatively easily without having to go and do something like that.
I don't want to be quoted as saying relatively easily, because every time I deal with construction, it's never easy, and we always have people upset, and we always, to make the omelet, you have to crack the egg. But we will make it easier than what it could be. Yes, sir, and we certainly want to give that thought.
Having the plans ahead of time make it easy.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Murray?
How hard is it to get the funding to add on to a school like Jonathan Hager or this new school?
It's a difficult question. So if you can justify it with the enrollment, state funding, as long as it's available and is within our current capital improvement plan, it can be received. But that is at the expense of other projects. Obviously, we get a set amount from the state, and then we get into the local funding constraints as well. If we would decide we want to do a project completely locally funded and go ahead and add on without seeking state funding, we could pretty much pursue that at any time by going through the Maryland State Department of Education, similar to how we've done some other projects. So it certainly can be done. We monitor those numbers, and we'll present that in the upcoming Educational Facility Master Plan. I'll be able to better go through some of the enrollment projections that would justify some of those projects. But yeah, we could do it either way.
Anyone else? I'll just say this, one of the main reasons I want to see this school built is because of the safety factor. The other two schools being replaced are both open schools, and as much as I hate to say it in this day and age, you got to consider that situation. Years ago, you never heard of it, but today it seems to be sometimes a part of society, and so it is. I also hate to see that there are 4 spaces accommodated for future portables. I hope we never have to do that, because that kind of defeats for me the purpose of safety for the school.
Still, we plan ahead for all those kind
Yeah,
of contingencies
right,
that we
right.
might have.
Some of that is as simple as just knowing where to run conduits through the building. So if we do need to run power or data out to those facilities, we can plan for that. And we
Right,
have,
right.
you know, it's just, again, it's just trying to make it easier if it would happen. We hope to never need it, but we want to be prepared.
Anyone else?
I want to add on to what you said about the safety. An open school is very hard to teach in. I mean, there's no full walls, so the sound travels, and it's a very difficult situation. So getting, not rid of, but closing 2 open schools and getting this new facility is much better educationally as well.
Anything else? All right, we'll move to the vote. We have a motion on the floor for approval of the Downsville Pike Elementary School schematic design. All those in favor? Vote is 6-0, and the student member concurs. Thank
very
you,
much.
ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it. Next, is Mr. Prue, naming rights for the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts Foundation Incorporated.
Thank you again, Mr. Stauffer. Board members, the item in front of you relates to a naming rights agreement and memorandum that the board has that was amended on November 3rd, 2020 with the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts Foundation, allowing them to install brick pavers in front of the school on South Potomac Street based on donations they received. The list that you've been provided is a listing of the bricks that we are seeking your approval on before they are installed.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve the naming rights received and committed by the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts Foundation Brick Paver Program.
Is there a second? That you again? All right, okay. Discussion, questions, comments? All in favor, please raise your hand. Vote is 6-0. Student member concurs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is donation of $20,000 from the Nora Roberts Foundation to be used to support the We the People competition. Dr. Wilcox.
Good evening, Vice President Stauffer, Dr. Sovine, and board members. I am requesting approval of a gift of $20,000 from the Nora Roberts Foundation to Boonesboro High School We the People program. The donation will be used toward the cost of attending the national finals in April. Boonesboro High School recently competed in the Maryland State competition in Annapolis and won the school's 9th consecutive state championship title.
Is there a motion?
Vice President Stauffer, I move to approve a gift of $20,000 from the Nora Roberts Foundation to be used to support the We the People competition.
Is there a second? Thank you, Ms. Murray. Any questions or discussion? I will say this, I'm glad you clarified what the $20,000 is going to be used for, because other schools do have We the People competition, and I thought, wow, 20,000 just to one team, but that makes sense. I understand that. Thank you.
I think it's also important to thank the Nora Roberts Foundation. They're very big
Oh.
supporters of our schools here, so it's very, very gracious of them.
A lot of things. We'll move to the vote. All in favor of receiving this donation? Vote is 6-0. Student member concurs. Thank you, Dr. Wilcox.
Thank you.
Back to the superintendent for more update.
Thank you, Mr. Stauffer, members of the board. Last week, had the honor of announcing the 2024 Educational Support Personnel of the Year, or WCPS, at the annual awards dinner. We had 5 outstanding finalists representing each of our ESP support areas. Our winner is Norma Kelly, a bus driver who has been with WCPS for 11 years. I look forward to recognizing Ms. Kelly and the other 4 finalists at the April 16th business meeting with the Board of Education. I also like to congratulate our winter state champion athletes. Smithsburg High School took home 2 championships on the season, one in girls indoor track and another in unified bocce. WCPS also saw an individual win in wrestling from Boonesboro High School and various individual champions in indoor track. Again, we will formally recognize these winter student athletes at the April business meeting. Speaking of champions, I'd really like to put a spotlight on the work of our pre-K educators and our students. WCPS issued a media release today that celebrated our gains in kindergarten readiness through the state's Kindergarten Readiness Assessment. Our Curriculum and Instruction Committee received a full report earlier this month, but I'd like to share some highlights. First, a win for our community. Just 6 years ago, 37% of our kindergartners showed they were ready for kindergarten. WCPS was ranked second to last in the state. Fast forward to this school year, and now 55% of our students showed they were ready for kindergarten. This includes students who came from other preschool settings like private daycare, at home care, and Head Start. This growth is huge. It's just simply a huge achievement for our community. These results are also a win for WCPS Pre-K. The data continues to show that students who have completed WCPS Pre-K are better prepared for kindergarten. Specifically, 66% of WCPS students are prepared for kindergarten compared to 34% of students who have other learning settings for pre-K. We are committed to working with our partners to see that more and more children are prepared to enter kindergarten and become successful lifelong learners. Today is the first day of spring, and I wanted to share a quick calendar reminder for our students, families, and staff. There's no school for students on Thursday, March the 28th. That is a professional learning day for teachers, so some of our staff will still be at school for that day. Spring break begins the following day, and schools will be closed from Friday, March the 29th through Monday, April the 1st. Lastly, this evening, I would like to simply share about my experiences in schools during Read Across America Week earlier this month. Members of senior leadership joined me to kick off the week-long reading celebration with a special event at Pangbourne Elementary School. Also had the opportunity to read with Hagerstown Mayor at Fountaindale Elementary School. We had a special assembly focused on reading to the whole school. First time I'd ever done that, which was just pretty incredible. Also had opportunities to visit classrooms at Greenbrier Elementary and finished out the week at Williamsport Elementary. I appreciate all the students and staff for making me feel so welcome, and as an educator, it's so rewarding to engage with our students through reading. Mr. Stauffer, members of the board, that completes my update and report.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, Dr. Webster, Personnel.
Good evening, Vice President Stauffer, members of the board, and Dr. Savine. As discussed earlier during closed session, there are several staff changes for your review, and at this time I ask for your approval of tonight's personnel actions.
Is there a motion?
Vice President Stauffer, I move to approve the personnel actions dated Tuesday, March 19th, 2024, as presented in closed session.
Second.
Second.
Questions, comments? These were discussed earlier in closed session. We'll go to the vote. All in favor? Vote is 6-0. Thank you, Dr. Webster.
Thank you.
Next, legislative briefing. And the agony in Annapolis is almost over. I've said many times through the years, thank goodness they only meet 90 days out of the year, not like Pennsylvania where they're full-time.
Well, Vice President Stauffer, Dr. Savan, members of the board, I'll try to spare you as much Annapolis agony as possible this evening and just provide you with just a brief overview with where we're at with regard to some of the legislation that we've advocated for on behalf of the board. Where we're at this point is yesterday was crossover day. So both the House and Senate, that was kind of the deadline of sorts for them to act upon legislation that originated in those houses. So there was a lot of catching up to do today because it was quite an eventful day yesterday in Annapolis. Moving on, and again, just to update you on the bills that we have submitted testimony for or gone to Annapolis and presented oral testimony. The residency bill that would essentially clean up the fact that currently you don't necessarily need to be a resident of Washington County to serve on the body on which you all serve. That cleanup is moving well. We provided written testimony on the House side. Mr. Bickford and I had the pleasure of enduring a little bit of Annapolis agony with regard to the Senate hearing, but that went very well. He did a great job, and I'm pleased to report that that legislation has moved through both the House and the Senate, so the bills have swapped, and it looks like that will indeed get through by the end of the session. So moving forward with that one, and it's looking good. Next bill that I wanted to highlight is with regard to interscholastic athletics. It's kind of lovingly been referred to as the BISFA bill. Basically would enable local boards of education to waive certain eligibility requirements, particularly for students in magnet programs in schools like BISFA, to enable them to participate in athletics and so forth at their home high schools. No action was taken on the Senate side with regard to the Senate bill. So for all intent and purposes, it has died on that side. However, the House bill did get through. It was amended. As it was originally proposed, it would have enabled any Board of Education across the state to have the authority to make those eligibility waivers and make decisions on those. What the House did was to greatly narrow it, and as it's currently written, this would be the only board in the state of Maryland that would have that authority. So that bill, as amended, is now gone over to the Senate side. We'll see how it is received over there. I will share just quickly that those who are opposed to the measure, based upon the testimony that was presented before the committees, some of the thought process is that this isn't really an issue for the state legislature. This is an issue for the MPSSA and so forth. So we'll see where it stands. Far be it from me to predict, but with it not getting a favorable review in the Senate, I don't know that the House bill will receive a much better welcome there. But we'll wait and see, and we'll continue to advocate on your behalf for that particular piece of legislation. Moving on to the bill regarding safety, school safety expenditures. And if you recall, as introduced, this asks for not only additional funding for this grant program, an increase in funding, but also additional flexibility, which would enable the grant funds to be spent not just on school resource officers, but also on school security employees. And that was something that I know was of great interest to this board. Where that stands, and again, we had advocated on this, the House did not take any action at the committee level on this bill. However, it did pass the Senate with amendments, and those amendments include, they softened the language with regard to the additional funding, and instead of essentially mandating the governor to increase that, it says that the governor may increase it, so it made that essentially optional. But the good news is that the bill, as it passed through the Senate, does provide that flexibility where that money could be spent for school security employees, not just SROs. So again, that would be favorable in the eyes of this board, and we'll continue to monitor that. The next bill I wanted to mention was the Community Schools Bill. You may remember from my report to you last month, our interest in this was that it would enable school districts with fewer than 40 community schools to utilize a small portion, up to 10% of the grant funding for those programs. And that would have equated to approximately a $900,000 positive impact on us here in Washington County. The House bill was approved, however, it was amended, and they stripped out that latitude for you to spend the local 10% if you had fewer than 40 community schools. So that's not a good thing from the perspective of this board. However, on the Senate side, it did pass, and not only did they leave that provision in there, they increased the amount that you could spend from 10% to 15%. So I haven't had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Prue to see how much that would increase the $900,000. One could make an assumption going from 10 to 15%, it might be approximately a $1.3 million impact. But again, it didn't get through the House in that form, so we'll just have to see where the legislators, what sort of compromise they may reach with regard to that. So
It'll
again,
go to a conference committee, right?
we'll see. Both sides have to act on the bills that they've received, and if they differ, then yes, sir, it will go to conference. Quickly, the next one, if you recall, we were interested in seeing some change with regard to how we have to advertise certain public hearings and bid announcements, requests for proposals and bids and so forth. Wanted the latitude to just post those at times as appropriate on the school district's website or other websites as opposed to having to find a newspaper and publish them there. This bill has been approved by both the House and the Senate. It's crossed over now, so I would expect passage of that. I think it went through unanimously on both houses. Some changes to the Maryland Meals for Achievement in Classroom program, and essentially this would just provide local districts with flexibility in how these meals are served. Students would still have to consume them in their classroom, but the way in which these meals are distributed would be altered and provide some additional flexibility. I worked with Mr. Embley to understand this issue, and he was supportive of this. We advocated on behalf, and the bills passed each chamber unanimously, so I would expect those at the end of the session to get through as well. With regard to universal expansion of breakfast and lunch programs, it's my understanding this is something that's been bantered about for a couple of years, at least in Annapolis. The House bill with regard to this did not get out of committee. The Senate did move forward the bill, but it was amended, and it is not for universal expansion. It's basically asking the MSDE to study this issue, and certainly with the fiscal nature of it, that seems reasonable perhaps. So what's still alive with regard to this is nothing more than a study at this point to determine all of the impacts of this. The Grow Your Own Educators Grant Program, I think you all are very familiar with the teacher shortage and the need to attract and retain high-quality instructors. This was a proposal to try to get after that, a grant program that would create a pathway of sorts for ESPs. We also advocated for those with provisional licenses to be able to perhaps benefit from this grant program if it were indeed to be established. The House bill did get through. They altered the language, again, similar fashion to the bill I referenced earlier, not requiring that the governor provide money in the budget for it, but saying that he may fund that, and then they also did expand the language in there as to who would be eligible for this program if it was established, to not only include the non-certified ESPs, but also the provisional teachers. So that would be a good thing. It would just widen the opportunity for this program if it comes to pass. The cross-file bill in the Senate did not pass, so as has been kind of the theme of the legislature, and you all spoke to it earlier, the state is facing some financial challenges, to say the least, and it seems like if there is a fiscal note attached to legislation, most of those bills are being not receiving a favorable report and not being passed because of the implications fiscally. Finally, these were not bills that we advocated for or against any particular thing, but I did want to note them just to give you a little flavor for some of the things that are working their way through. The first two bills there are referred to as the Transparency in Education Spending Act. And basically, the objective here is to ensure that reports and information that county governments may need to help from school boards, or boards of education, pardon me, that they have access to those reports and things. MACO is a big supporter of this bill. They've worked together with MABE on it, And currently where that stands is the House side and the Senate side, there's different language in there, and they're just going to have to hammer that out. But this is one that we're certainly paying attention to. We understand and appreciate the board's commitment to fiscal transparency, so certainly we know that you all are in favor of that. But by the same token, we also recognize that one of your core values in your legislative program this year is local control. So we want to make sure that that bill, in whatever its final form might be, doesn't take any of that control away from you all with regard to decisions made with regard to the school budget, but yet maintaining that strong level of transparency. Other bill to note would require coaches to go through training with regard to mental health, to recognize perhaps students who are struggling and having issues and so forth, with mental health being such a hot topic, and rightfully so. This is something that we anticipate will go through. Right now, as it's written, it just requires the State Department of Education and a number of other entities to work together on the guidelines and what that training would look like. But that would be an additional thing that coaches would have to go through, and it's my understanding they already received some of that, but this would just be perhaps an additional level in formalizing this more. Again, looking out for students, which I know we're all in favor of. And then finally, the last bill that I wanted to mention this evening for you had to do with student telehealth appointments. I understand this is something that has come forward in past sessions as well. And basically, it helps to open the door, arguably, for students to have telehealth appointments. It will be during the school day, and some of the challenges with that is for schools, particularly schools that are crowded, to identify spaces where students could participate in these spaces that are private. And so those are kind of both sides of the arguments with regard to that. One, certainly you want to provide students with supports that they need, but by the same token, you've got schools to operate and space can be at a premium. So where that one is, it passed in the House, it did not pass in the Senate, and what we're hearing from PZAM, MABE, and others is they don't anticipate that moving forward again this year. But I did think that I would mention that to you because it may be something that you hear about. Finally, just a reminder, the session is scheduled to end on April the 8th. The next board meeting at which a legislative update is planned is April 16th, so hopefully we'll have some level of finality with a lot of this. And then again, as I noted earlier, the governor has until close to the end of May to act on any legislation that got its way through the General Assembly to either approve that or veto that, and so we'll continue to keep you updated. Any questions? Yes, sir.
House Bill 200, Senate Bill 161, Community Schools. What do the amendments leave on the House side? Because you said that they basically stripped both key aspects. So what does that really leave on the House Bill side, if anything?
There's a lot of language in that bill. Let me get my notes here about it. With regard to assessment tools in assessing those schools. So a lot of that language has to do with assessments and things. They just took out the part that would have provided districts such as ours with fewer than 40 community schools the ability to spend some of that money. So there's some other items in there that I didn't mention specifically.
Anyone else? And there were, just to repeat, there were, 400 and some bills introduced just on education out of 1,000 and some bills in the General Assembly this year, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. And I would like, if I could, just take one more moment. I do want to voice appreciation to Ms. Brown, Mrs. Ram, Dr. Savine, and others. It is a team effort. I come and present the reports to you, but I can tell you I have appreciated working with the team, and every day we get a report as to what bills have changed in the General Assembly over the previous 24 hours that Ms. Brown sends out to us, and we're continuing to meet weekly and debrief and review those 40 and keep track on behalf of the board as best we can. So it's a good team, and I'm proud to be a part of it.
All right.
I just wanted to add, it was fascinating being down there that day. I did want to pass along our thanks to the head of PZAM, Mary Pat, what's her name? But that morning, she'd been part of it was a subcommittee hearing, I think, right? And here our residency requests seemed to be relatively simple, and it sounded to me like they were reading more into it, and she immediately brought that to our attention, that we might want to add a line in our statements to, one, say that this does not necessarily impact superintendents, and then also some people were worried that it was an effort to remove any current board members, and we had to say that all board members are current residents of the. So that was an example of, we thought this was a relatively simple bill, and yet there were questions brought up, and Pazam pointed them out to us. So.
And thank you, Mr. Bickford, for pointing that out. While you all were there, actually, Mrs. Fannin, Mary Pat Fannin, the executive director of Pazam, sent me a text and asked if residency was an issue with any of the sitting board members. My response was no. So she was able to quickly navigate some of those items that were kind of bubbling up. So.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good presentation. All right, next up, board member committee reports. We'll start with Dr. Zentmeyer.
C and I met last week at Bester Elementary. It was fabulous. The principal, Tamsin Wilson, there gave us a passionate snapshot of the school. Then Kelly Longerbeam, who is always animated and always draws you in, gave us the snapshot that we saw of the 2023 good news of our kindergarten readiness assessments. Paula Moore, who was here also, presented the access results. Merci, tu es très gentil. And Amy Seiler gave us the skinny on the upcoming solar eclipse. Our next CNI meeting is April 3rd, 11 a.m. at Hickory. Thank you.
Mr. Gessford.
Our next meeting will be, on facilities, will be March the 26th in the Hagerstown room at 1 o'clock.
Mr. Bickford.
Finance meets April 10th at 1 p.m.
Mrs. Murray.
HR doesn't meet again until June, I think it's 14th, at 1 o'clock in the board conference room.
Mr. Snyder.
Yeah, so the Washington County Association of Student Councils is holding our final General Assembly for the year here in the boardroom, meeting room on April 12th. We invite any Board of Education members, any staff leadership to come and attend. It is from 9:30 to 1 p.m., I believe. We will be holding elections for the Board of Student Leaders, who are the basically executive board of the Washington County Association of Student Councils. So they are managing our committees. They are manning testimony, which is sent to the Maryland General Assembly. There was actually a bill in here that we sent a positive testimony on, House Bill 204 and Senate Bill 165, which was coaches and mental health. And additionally, our next SMOB will be elected at that General Assembly. The Washington County Association of Student Councils Legislative Committee is currently in the process of both redesigning the Elections Committee for all elections, which includes the student member on the board election, and further, the Board of Student Leaders has agreed, and we're moving forward with redesigning and reconstructing the election process for the student member on the board to engage a larger portion of the Washington County student body to be more inclusive and more representative of the wants and needs of students. And finally, the Maryland Association of Student Councils is hosting the Spring Leadership Conference here in our county at South Hagerstown High School, which is pretty much a rarity. Usually our Washington County students have to commute over 2 hours to any Maryland event, and your school does not need to be a member school, so any teachers, principals, advisors, counselors with engaged middle or high school students, I really encourage you to encourage your students to get involved. Oh, and we actually had a student win the presidency for the Maryland Association of Student Councils, which hasn't happened in over 30 years. Shraddha Bista, a junior at North Hagerstown High School, will be the Maryland Association of Student Councils president next year. So a big congratulations to her, and that concludes my report. Thank you.
Sounds like you've been busy.
Yep.
Policy Committee will meet at 1 p.m. on April the 11th, and we've been very busy, as you saw on tonight's agenda. So now it's time for, save time, future agenda items, board members are listed and so forth. You can check those out. I won't go through them. Board member comments. Who wants to start? Dr.
You
Zentmeyer.
have a problem. I have one. I don't want to give up one of the only good things to come out of COVID, ABLE, and I don't want to give up our reading tutors who have proven that they help our emerging readers learn to read. So I'm looking to one of my favorite problem solvers, George Washington Carver. You may remember that he was the one who introduced crop rotation in the South. The problem was peanuts didn't have a market. And so he did what he always did, took a 4 a.m. walk with God, much like people see it with me here. The depleted soil, not helping the economy, no market for peanuts, what do? That's a big problem. In 1921, he testified before the House Ways and Means Committee. He had 10 minutes. They extended his time, mesmerized by the myriad uses of the peanut. Everything from shaving cream and fertilizer to makeup and Worcestershire sauce. And he was invited back to talk for as long as he wanted. Good ideas are good. We need a God idea to solve this budget dilemma. And so I'm asking, are there any takers? Please sign up in advance. We need to hear from you.
Mr. Evans?
Well, I'll start out by saying that Dr. Zentmeyer and I got to go with Dr. Savine to South High. When was that? Like February 22nd, is a month ago, for the robotics competition. So it was cool. A teacher I used to teach with out in Anne Arundel County had her students out there, and they were doing really, really well. And then the kid dropped their robot and couldn't participate in the semis. So that was devastating. But hey, I guess kids learn lessons too, I guess. So, but either way, though, it was great to see all the kids out there. As far as the budget goes, you know, people, I do my best to make sure there's no question about where I stand. I quite frankly don't like the budget where we are. I think that we can fully fund everything that's needed and still make cuts at the same time. We have added several positions here in CES that we have not considered cutting over the past couple years, but we made no issue cutting some of the proposed new positions here, in the schools. So, you know, I think that when we talk about asking if the county commissioners are, what their vision is for education, I kind of think that we need to ask ourselves that too. You know, we spend an awful lot of money, and I understand that there's always more we could do if we had more money, and I'm sure there would be some great things. But I question what is it that we find important if we are saying that we need these positions in the schools, but we're not willing to cut any of the new positions we created here in CES. So I agree with our ABLE program. I think there's things that we need to do to maintain that. There are other uses that I think we can use to help that, to innovate our system, innovate new ideas, and you know, maybe it's not a traditional school day for some of the kids, but there are more uses we can have out of that. And to go and cut our elementary program, I don't think that that's a good idea. I think we need to utilize the technology that came out of that. And I guess I'll just leave that there. Thank you.
Mr. Gessford?
I don't have anything for this evening.
Okay. Mr. Bickford?
For me, thanks.
Mrs. Murray?
Everybody that came out to speak tonight, whether you were coming out to speak at the board meeting or at the public hearing, we appreciate hearing from you. As far as ABLE is concerned, we're still having 6th through 12th grade, so those students can be online. We talk about money and how we can best fit our budget. We only had a couple of kids in 1st through 5th grade signed up for ABLE, so to stop that program is cost-effective if you look at it. Look at our consent agenda tonight. What do you want to take out of there? Should we not do a roof? Should we not do something? It takes money to run a school system. And we have very old buildings, and we can't replace them. It takes a lot of money to replace a school. So we have to look at ways to follow those things, do those things for our school system, and show our employees that we value them more than anything. So it is a balancing act. We try to do the best we can. Hopefully we do.
I just have a couple things. One, I attended the robotics competition also. In fact, I ate lunch with Mr. Evans that day, and met his friend from Anne Arundel, I think it was, county.
She's in Baltimore City now.
Yeah.
I
right.
knew her in Anne Arundel.
Right. Attended the ESP of the Year thing. I want to thank Mrs. Kelly and the 4 finalists and all the nominees who got nominated for that and so forth. And then the real delight was reading to a 4th grade class at Greenbrier Elementary. I read Rosie Revere, Engineer, and those kids were sharp. I read the same book because it was approved for 5th grade at Williamsport Elementary. Those kids were sharp. And I don't want this to sound badly, but the best thing was reading The Lion Inside to the pre-K class at Williamsport Elementary. I walk into the room, this little girl comes up. She probably came up maybe just past my knees, and she just grabbed me around the legs and gave me a hug, and then next thing I know, there's a little boy coming up, and he's just comes up and kind of puts his arm around me and so forth. As the old commercial says, that's priceless. You can't put a price on those things. And having 3 great-grandchildren, 5, 3, and 18 months, and one of them in pre-K, I appreciated that. So want to thank everybody who came out. Good hearing. And Dr. Sovine, you can see Virginia play. I got you out of here before 9:20.
Mr. Stauffer,
So.
I haven't spoken yet.
Oh, I was your lengthy report. I thought they were your comments. My apology.
No, just student council updates. So yesterday I got to read to 2 elementary school classes at Williamsport Elementary, which was absolutely a delight. To teachers for having me and letting me interrupt your class. It was honestly so much fun. It's so nice to engage with the larger community. And to talk about the budget and the comments that we received as a student, I sincerely empathize with the sentiment of doing more with less. I think it's incredibly difficult for us as students and for my educators, my teachers, to continue to break past this feeling that we are continuously being undercut and we're continuously being underserved in terms of educational resources. And I'm continuously hearing my teachers tell me that a student, that they are considering leaving our county because they don't feel they're compensated enough and they don't feel they have the resources of the support. And I understand that our board is doing everything that we can, but it is truly unsustainable to continue to be where we are and to continue maintaining our effort outside of just the budget, but just where we truly are. And I do appreciate the advisory committee on the budget, was that their comments specifically about EL and the positions that we removed, because supporting our struggling students is really where we need to be right now. Because that's just a population that's growing. Our EL population is growing exponentially. And as a student in a school with an incredible EL population, we just need more support. That's really where our attention, I believe, needs to be. And that is all. Thank you.
My sincere apologies. I didn't mean to overlook you, but sometimes I forget things. Dr. Sovine?
Mr. Stauffer, just a quick comment. I want to express my appreciation for the citizens that took time to come out this evening to comment on the FY25 budget. Also, I want to end on a positive note. We recognize that the budget process is always challenging. But we've made reference to the Reading Apprenticeship Program, and I believe we all agree the Reading Apprenticeship Program is a shining star of Washington County. great results, supports our youngest readers, also creates a Grow Your Own. Just for clarity's sake, we recognize that while that was in the initial draft budget, it was removed. However, we have a funding source thanks to our partners from MSDE. So that will continue with that funding source. It will just not be required from the general fund, but we'll continue to utilize grant dollars so that we can continue to support our students, our youngest readers that may need some additional support, and hopefully continue to grow that pipeline of educators. But we see the value in that, and we're one of the few districts in the state of Maryland that has such a program. Mr. Stauffer, that concludes my report.
And I want to say, I was just joking with Dr. Savine about that. We do have a light side here among all the board members and everything. No further ado, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.